In a move that has sent shockwaves across the globe, Russian President Vladimir Putin has unveiled Russia's latest weapon, the hypersonic Oreshnik missile. This announcement, made on November 22, 2024, has further escalated tensions between Russia and the West, raising fears of a new arms race. Putin confirmed the Oreshnik's inaugural use against a Ukrainian defense facility in Dnipropetrovsk. This event marks a significant escalation in the ongoing conflict, signaling a dangerous turn towards potentially uncontainable warfare. The Oreshnik, capable of reaching speeds of up to Mach 10, is designed to overcome existing air and missile defense systems. This makes it a game-changer in modern warfare, giving Russia a significant strategic advantage. With its ability to evade even the most sophisticated defenses, the Oreshnik poses a direct threat to the security architecture of the West. The world watches with bated breath, grappling with the implications of this new weapon. The unveiling of the Oreshnik is not just a show of force, it is a stark reminder of the volatile geopolitical landscape and the potential for miscalculation with catastrophic consequences. Putin didn't stop at showcasing Russia's military might. He pointedly accused the United States and NATO of fueling the conflict in Ukraine, directly blaming them for the escalation. He cited the West's provision of long-range weapons to Ukraine, including American ATACMS and British Storm Shadow missiles, as evidence of their role in the conflict. Putin alleges that these weapons, intended for Ukraine's defense, have been used to strike targets within Russia's pre-2014 borders. This, he argues, is a clear provocation and a direct threat to Russia's security. He claims that the West, by arming Ukraine, is not seeking peace but rather aiming to weaken and destabilize Russia. These accusations have been met with strong denials from the US and NATO. They maintain that their support for Ukraine is purely defensive, intended to help the country protect itself from Russian aggression. They argue that Russia is attempting to deflect blame for its own actions and justify its unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. The West's stance is that Russia is the aggressor in this conflict, and its actions are in violation of international law. They argue that the provision of weapons to Ukraine is necessary to help the country defend itself against an illegal invasion. Despite the escalating tensions, Putin has maintained that Russia remains open to peace talks. However, this openness is juxtaposed with stark warnings of retaliation should Russia face further aggression. This dual message has left the world grappling with uncertainty, unsure of Russia's true intentions. Putin's words suggest a willingness to engage in dialogue, but his actions, particularly the deployment of the Oreshnik, paint a different picture. This discrepancy raises questions about the sincerity of Russia's commitment to finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The international community has called on Russia to engage in good faith negotiations and de-escalate the situation. They have urged Putin to cease all hostilities and withdraw his forces from Ukraine. The fear is that further escalation could lead to a wider war with devastating consequences. The world waits anxiously to see if Putin's words will be followed by concrete actions. The hope is that diplomacy will prevail, but the threat of further violence hangs heavy in the air. The deployment of the Oreshnik and Putin's accusations against the West have shaken the foundations of global security. The potential for miscalculation and escalation is higher than ever, leaving the world on edge, fearing a wider conflict. The introduction of hypersonic weapons like the Oreshnik changes the dynamics of warfare, creating new dangers and uncertainties. These weapons, with their speed and maneuverability, challenge traditional defense mechanisms and raise the specter of rapid escalation. The breakdown of trust between Russia and the West further complicates the situation. The accusations and counter-accusations make it difficult to find common ground and increase the risk of misinterpretation and accidental escalation. The world is at a crossroads, facing a choice between dialogue and confrontation. The path chosen in the coming days will have profound consequences, not just for Russia and Ukraine, but for the entire world. Section 5. The INF Treaty, a casualty of escalating tensions. Putin's announcement of potential global missile deployments is a direct consequence of the collapse of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces, or INF Treaty. This treaty, signed in 1987, played a crucial role in maintaining strategic stability by eliminating an entire class of nuclear missiles. The U.S. withdrawal from the INF Treaty in 2019, citing Russian violations, dealt a significant blow to global arms control efforts. This move, criticized by many as short-sighted and destabilizing, opened the door for a new arms race. Putin's threat to deploy missiles globally is a direct response to the US withdrawal from the INF Treaty. He argues that Russia is no longer bound by the treaty's restrictions and will take necessary measures to ensure its security. The collapse of the INF Treaty is a stark reminder of the fragility of arms control agreements in the face of escalating tensions. It highlights the urgent need for renewed dialogue and a commitment to arms control as a means of preventing a dangerous new arms race. Section 6. Putin's perspective, US hegemony, and global instability. Central to Putin's narrative is the accusation that the United States, in its pursuit of global hegemony, is responsible for undermining international security. He argues that the US, through its actions, is dismantling the existing world order and creating a climate of instability and distrust. Putin points to the US's history of military interventions, its withdrawal from key arms control agreements, and its attempts to impose its will on other nations as evidence of its destabilizing role in the world. He argues that the US, by acting unilaterally and disregarding international law, is eroding the very foundations of global security. He sees the conflict in Ukraine as a direct result of this US-led destabilization. Putin's perspective, while disputed by the West, resonates with some who share his concerns about US foreign policy. They argue that the US's actions often create more problems than they solve and that a more multipolar world order is needed to ensure stability. Section 7. The Uncertain Future. Navigating the Path Forward. The unveiling of the Oreshnik missile, coupled with Putin's accusations and warnings, has cast a long shadow over the future. The world is left grappling with uncertainty, unsure of what the coming days and months hold. The path forward is fraught with risk. The potential for miscalculation and escalation is high, and the consequences of a wider conflict are too dire to contemplate. The world watches nervously, hoping for a de-escalation but bracing for further confrontation. Dialogue and diplomacy remain the only viable options for averting disaster. The international community must urge both sides to exercise restraint, engage in good faith negotiations, and seek a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The stakes are incredibly high. The future of global security, and indeed the world as we know it, hangs in the balance. It is a time for cool heads, clear thinking, and a commitment to peace above all else. Section 8. International Response, Condemnation, and Calls for Restraint. The international community has reacted with a mixture of condemnation and concern to Putin's announcement. Governments and international organizations have issued statements expressing their deep unease over the escalating tensions and calling for restraint from all parties involved. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting to address the situation. While no concrete actions were agreed upon, the majority of members condemned Russia's actions and called for a de-escalation of the conflict. The European Union and NATO have both expressed their unwavering support for Ukraine and condemned Russia's aggressive actions. They have reiterated their commitment to providing Ukraine with the necessary means to defend itself. China, while refraining from directly criticizing Russia, has called for all parties to exercise restraint and engage in dialogue to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis. Section 9. Conclusion. A world holding its breath. The world stands at a precipice. The unveiling of the Oreshnik missile is not merely a military development, it's a stark symbol of the perilous state of global affairs. The potential consequences of the current crisis extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine, threatening to plunge the world into a new era of conflict and uncertainty. As the international community grapples with the implications of Putin's announcement, one thing is clear: the need for dialogue and diplomacy has never been greater. The world waits with bated breath, hoping that cooler heads will prevail and that a path to peace can be found. The alternative, a world consumed by conflict and shadowed by the specter of nuclear war, is too terrifying to contemplate.